into it. And also as a reminder, my name is Kristen May. I'll be your facilitator for today's meeting. So with that, I'm gonna just jump on in. We do have a pretty dense agenda today. So Bernice is going to be providing an update on our overall VTA BSV Phase 2 project, which will include some updates on our project schedule, funding, and some of our recent board referral items. So we'd like to take the time to get your feedback on our current CWG meeting structure. We'll be having a poll and open discussion. And following our Phase 2 section, Melissa will be providing an update on our transit-oriented communities grant. And then Matt will be sharing an update on our early construction activities, and we'll be presenting on our current community engagement efforts as well. And then we'll have some space for our CWG member report outs as per usual. And then a reminder that the CWG member report outs are a great opportunity for you to share how you are sharing any project information with your communities, and also ways that we can support you in that as well. And then of course, we'll conclude with our next steps and sneak peek into our next meeting. So that's our agenda for tonight. And then before we get into our presentation, I would like to do our roll call and run through our CWG member list. So if you could introduce yourself for the group by stating your name and your org, that would be great. So I know Adina mentioned she couldn't make it today, but I do see Alan here. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Alan Williams, the Nagley Park Neighborhood Campus Community Association.
Thanks, Alan. And I don't see Bert on the line here tonight, nor do I see Carol. Is Charlie on the line? Don't see Charlie. Chris Morrissey.
Chris Morrissey with the San Jose Arena Authority.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to see you. Dana doesn't look like she's here. Edgar, I don't see either. Elizabeth, I don't see. James, I think I saw you're on the line.
Hey, James Duran, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Thanks, James. I don't think Jeffrey's on the line, nor Jose. Jim, I think you're on the line. Oh, you're muted.
Jim Goddard, Shark Sports and Entertainment. Also Chris Shea, who's our actual point person's on the line as well.
Yes. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Absolutely. I work for Jim here on behalf of Shark Sports and Entertainment as well.
Thank you both. And I don't see Kristen, nor Larry. Mike, is that you on the line?
It is Michael McLean with Adobe.
Awesome. Thanks for making it out, Mike.
Yep.
And then I think I saw Nate.
Hi, everybody. Nate LeBlanc, San Jose Downtown Association.
Thank you, Nate. And I don't think I see Ron, but Tony is here.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Tony Miranda with Kitchell CEM, representing the San Jose Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Tony. And thank you for stepping into the downtown Diridon chair last meeting. Really appreciate that. All right, thank you for that roll call. We'll head into our next slide for our upcoming meetings. We just wanted to share some dates here. There may be an additional CWG meeting scheduled before our typical September 10th meeting that will be happening. I will, of course, email any information and updates as that gets confirmed. And then there are also a handful of upcoming Board of Directors meetings, as well as VTA BSV2 Oversight Committee meetings that will be happening within the next few months. And there will be a Diridon JPAB meeting on May 15th to be on your radar. And as a reminder, I will be emailing alerts for any other meetings that arise. So lots of meetings to have on your radar. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Bernice for our phase 2 update.
Right, we can go to the next slide, Kristen. Am I off mute? Oh, yes, I am. Okay. So we have been really trying to raise lots of visibility on the project. We're at a critical time, and we had 2 tours that we conducted the end of last month. One of them was with the Federal Transit Administration, Region 9 office. That is the there are various regions for every part of the country. We're in Region 9. It covers like California coast and I believe Hawaii, if I'm correct, Matt. I think they're joining with them. But really important for us to really be able to take them along the alignment and go over some key aspects of the project. Our chief is down there at the downtown center talking about various aspects of the project and some of the development that will occur. And then we also had the opportunity to take the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. They were in for a weekend conference, I believe, and part of that included a walking tour. And we had them visit the future downtown station and once again showed them some of the planned development in the area and kind of gave them a visual idea where the station will be sitting downtown and just a general project update on lots of aspects and benefits of the project. Can go to the next slide. So this is our program schedule. And we are right now, if you look where it says early work construction in that kind of glowing pink area, we about 2 weeks ago started the actual early prep work at the West Portal in city of San Jose, Santa Clara, right there along the border at the Santa Clara station in Newhall Yard. So we're working on that and exciting time. And many of you know that we will be doing some official announcement, I think, in the very near future of our new naming for the tunnel boring machine as we start getting into construction. We will be working in that area for a little over a year and a half before we start our major construction. That's designated in the dark purple. And then we spent a couple of years really testing the system and integrating with the BART service to have a system that where they can train their operators, test the trains. And then our targeted revenue service date, that's passenger service, is 2037. This date that you see that says 2039 is when we negotiate our agreement with the Federal Transit Administration for a full funding grant agreement. They give us basically a project deadline that we have to finish all the activities, and that's when our funding allocations end. So that is with that 2039 date. It adds that contingency in for anything that could extend the duration, and really with the agreement basically that we'll have had completed everything by that date per our contractual agreement for funding. And we can go to the next slide. So we submitted, there are various phases in the process to apply for and qualify for federal funding. You start in a preliminary engineering phase. We, at the end of March, entered into the next phase where we advanced design to approximately 60%, and that was submitted in late March at the end of the month. As such, we are engaging more fully with the Federal Transit Administration. Our general manager and some board members went and met with the acting administrator that took the place of Nuria Fernandez, our former GM, who retired in February. They also met with a lot of congressional delegates and senior staff from the Office of Business Management and some of the appropriations committees in DC. So just really trying to raise visibility, tout the merits of the project. We had some reviews with the Federal Transit Administration's financial management oversight consultant, looking at our funding plans. And then on a regular basis, part of us applying and receiving federal funds is that we engage a project management oversight consultant. They're sort of like in an auditor role, just making sure we're advancing properly through all the steps of the project. We're managing things, going through risk, and we meet with them on a monthly basis, and we continue to do that. And then we are now getting ready to submit our actual application for the full funding grant agreement. And that is the agreement. We're asking for approximately $6 billion. And then that agreement, if executed, which we are hoping to have, we'll submit sometime later this summer. And then shooting to have that agreement executed before the end of the year. And in that agreement, it basically outlines the allocation levels for each year, how long we'll be receiving allocations, and all of sort of the requirements that we are required to meet to receive that funding. And we can go to the next slide. So this is our path. As I mentioned, we submitted all of that, all the materials. There are documents and documents, our management plans, our financial plans, like just hundreds and hundreds of pages of documentation and approaches to delivering the project and how we're managing the project. And we submitted that in our 60% design back in March. We then get basically an approval of those materials that we submitted. And then once we get that, then that's when we submit that formal grant application later this summer, sometime in the July timeframe. And really trying to have everything executed before the end of the year, because we do not know what the new environment will be as far as support for transit infrastructure, depending on the outcome of the election and what top priorities will be with our new president come 2025. This shows our funding plan. As I mentioned, we are requesting a little bit over $6 billion from the Federal Transit Administration. If you look at this chart, like everything in the dark blue on the top is the federal contribution we're looking for. But what's really important is the amount of local, state, and regional money that is going to be part of this funding plan. If you look over $4.5 billion from both the 2000 Measure A and the 2016 Measure B. That really shows how much the community wants this project and the support there were in those sales tax measures to deliver this project. We've also qualified for a significant amount of state funding and regional funding. So we're halfway there and looking to get that other approximate half from the federal government. The chart on the left shows like the Federal Transit Administration. We have to keep track of the budget and all the cost for this project. And so these are the categories that the Federal Transit Administration monitors and how we have to divide the cost for this project, and coming up to the total of the 12.7 billion. But this really breaks down all the major elements of where that money will go. Next slide, please. So a very, very exciting announcement was last Thursday. We got a $500 million allocation in the president's federal FY24 budget. Significant news for the project, because what it really does is it really is a testament that the federal government sees merit in this project. And this would be our first allocation of that $6.2 billion we're requesting. So they're basically saying we are in support. We've already allocated those funds. So if you get this full funding grant agreement at the end of the year, you will be in this, you will be getting an allocation of $500 million as the first part of your $6.2 billion. So that really was, what do I want to say? Just a big positive sort of nod and boost to this project. It really is a statement that we got this $500 million allocation designated to the project. So in an effort to ensure that the full funding grant agreement that we need to have to actually get this $500 million happens, we've really been trying to raise visibility, visits to Washington, meeting with local stakeholders, everybody who is going to be meeting with any of their congressional delegates, arming them with materials, really touting the benefits of the project, and all in the next couple of slides. But the next 6 months are really critical for the future of this project and getting that federal grant. We got basically a letter of no prejudice that allowed us to continue to incur cost in certain categories and do certain things. But this will really be sort of the the last important element for us to fully engage. And we're beginning early work construction, but to really advance and go into major construction. So this is some of the really important messages that you all probably know, but really that we're trying to emphasize. I don't know if some of you have been reading some of the recent media, and while we have lots and lots of supporters, there are some people that still question the merits of the project. Really just want to re-emphasize, why are we doing this? Why are we here? So as I mentioned before, 2024, this is a critical year for this project. And there are so many benefits of this project. First of all, we have a long-term commitment to deliver what the voters asked for in passing both the 2000 Measure A and the 2016 Measure B. That those were passed by more than 2/3 of the voters in Santa Clara County. And we do have a commitment to deliver on what they voted for. And this really does complete that rail ringing the bay, a longtime vision for those of us in the south part of San Francisco Bay. If any of you have been on the roads lately, I know that there's still a lot of remote work, but for those of us who are still commuting, traffic is the worst it's ever been, because carpooling is no longer happening. People, because their schedules are now so flexible, they don't want to have to be constrained to certain times. So I think there are more cars on the road than there were pre-pandemic. And we cannot continue our current mobility patterns without negatively impacting both our own physical health and the environmental health. So this project really is an environmentally friendly alternative to solo driving. Next slide, please. It's really important as we deliver this project to really talk about the equitable merits of it. And a key aspect is the Eastridge to Light Rail BART connector that's happening to really ensure that those living in the less served areas of East San Jose that have access to the BART system through that connection. So that'll be really important. The economics in that area, there are many more financially not as affluent individuals that this system will serve and really connect them to key services and jobs. Also helps with affordable housing because of the planned transit-oriented development with 60 million square feet of commercial and residential development planned to be near these station areas. And that really helps promote transit use as well. If you don't have to rely on a car to get to those essential services. And the economy, huge return on investment with this project. For every dollar invested, the anticipated return on investment is $5. Also a huge contributor to employment, creating 75,000 jobs, both direct, those working on the project, and all the indirect jobs to basically manufacture the materials, ship the materials, and even support those in construction, having lunch in the area or stopping and running errands or getting gas to fuel those vehicles. So just a huge creator of jobs. We've met with some of you, but we really are wanting to utilize all of your connections and contacts to help us really promote the project and its benefits over the next several months. So we are happy to arm you with any kind of letter templates, with any of our promotional information, presentations if you're out and about and you want to mention it. Any type of, if your organization has any kind of government affairs folks and they're going to be in Sacramento or Washington, just really passing on the merits of this project and how much it means to our county and region. Next, I want to just talk about, some of you may know that we got some direction from some of our board members addressing 4 items. And it was to really come up with a plan to look at some of the planned above ground facilities at our 28th Street Little Portugal, and to come up with a plan how we're going to work with our community. Also about looking in separate from our current environmentally cleared project, strategies and ways to incorporate a southern entrance in downtown. look at both the above ground facilities at the Diridon station and how we might be able to work with both looking at operational efficiencies of some of the essential equipment, same situation at 28th Street, and how we place that and BART and kind of balancing that placement. And then with this group, our community working groups, there was a direction to revisit in-person meetings, and Kristen's going to kind of go through a little poll in a little bit on that and look at how we want to really proceed with this very valuable group and our other working groups, and how we can be the most effective. We're going to look at some different ways about disseminating information, maybe adding some time at the beginning of meetings just to have some more general discussion with community working group members before we get into the more structured elements, to just have things be a little more free flowing, and so we can really hear some spontaneous, unrestricted feedback.
Yes, thank you, Bernice. And we do have a section to kind of go through our polls as well as an open discussion on your feedback for that. But before we do, I do want to pause there because I know that was a lot that Bernice covered in that phase 2 update. So if there's any questions with regards to that section, then I'd like to open up the floor for folks to just ask or clarify. All right, if there's no questions, then we can jump on in, but thank you, Bernice, for that phase 2 update.
Oh, sorry, I do
am-
have one question.
Oh, yes, please go ahead, Alan.
So I keep hearing about the increasing costs, and then I said the cost looks like it's balanced with the revenue. Is that correct? Do we know that that we have all the money for the current or the expected costs, or is that something that's changing on a daily basis still?
Bernice, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So at our, we had our cost estimates that we were at that correlated to 60% design. And right now, some of the activities that we're doing are to ensure, like we're looking at, value engineering, we're looking at optimization. So making every effort as we advance design to keep in those budgets, right? And that's why as we're looking at all of these things and how we're configuring the stations, right, to make sure that we stay within that budget. So we don't know definitively as we advance from 60 to 80 to 100, but the ultimate goal is to maintain those project costs and submit an application that demonstrates we can fund a project. So that will be part of the next application when we have our full funding grant agreement. There might be some slight changes, but not aware of anything significant. But that will be part of our financial plan and the exact budget, because that's really when we submit that application in July, that is basically what the FTA sets like their budget. And then once they decide how much money we're going to get based on that plan, that's how much money. That does not change. So it won't go up. So it's at that point that we really need to have everything locked in.
Thanks, Bernice. James, I see your hands raised as well.
Yes, what do you expect in terms of the full funding agreement? When do you expect a response, and what sort of response do you expect?
Bernice, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So we're submitting our application in July, and then they have several months. There's a lot of I don't know where that came from, but there is a lot of review of all those materials, and it's a iterative process, collaborative process. They might ask more information, but ultimately our goal is to execute that agreement, that contract. It's basically a contractual agreement between the federal government. It's a grant, right? And all the terms before the end of the year. As I said, because of the possible change in administration and the priorities that could be set from a new administration, like ever since the federal news starts, that is the program that we're applying for this money. The federal government has never not fully funded any of those grant agreements. Like they have never, once the grant agreement is executed, there has not been an agency that did not get that funding or the funding at the level of the agreement. So that's why everything is so important that this gets executed by the end of the year.
Thanks, Bernice. Any other questions for this section before we move on? All right. Then we will move on to our next section. So as Bernice mentioned, we do want to engage you and get a sense of your feedback with regard to the way that we've been, running our CWGs as well as the format and whatnot. So we'll go through a series of poll questions first, and then I'll share our results, and then I will open the floor up for general discussion if there's further comment. But we'd love to hear your feedback on this. So with that being said, I will open up our first question here. So our first question is, would you like to resume in-person CWG meetings? So if you could select, you should see a little prompt that's come up on your screen to choose either yes or no. And I'll give you some time to capture that feedback there. And let me know if you're having any trouble accessing the poll on your end. And I see some of you have skipped on to our next questions as well. Our second question is, if you would like in-person CWG meetings, how often would you like to attend? And this is a select all that apply. And that would be committing to every in-person meeting, every other in-person meeting, one in-person meeting per year, or preference towards virtually, or a mixture of both. And then our third question, I like the current format with staff facilitation. So selecting one, yes or no. And then the fourth question, I would prefer a shift in meeting format towards external facilitation, yes or no. And then our fifth question, would you be interested in a pre-meeting networking time with other CWG members, project staff, and any invited presenters? That's also a select one, yes or no. And then our sixth question, would you like to review project documents prior to the presentations at the board of directors meeting? That's yes or no. And then our last question, that one's open-ended, but if there's any other feedback to provide on our CWG meetings, we'd love to hear it. So that's a kind of fill in the blank, or not fill in the blank, up to your desires there. And I'll give it a little bit of time just to let folks finish answering. Thank you to those of you who have already gone through all 7 of our questions. Very speedy. Appreciate it. All right, looks like it's settling out. I'm going to end the poll and share our, oh, there's 2 more that just came in. I'll give it 10 more seconds just in case. All right. I'm going to end the poll now. And then I'm going to share the results so you should be able to see them on your end. But it looks like overall, folks don't want to return to in-person meetings. Looks like it's pretty relatively evenly split on preference for how often, but leaning towards more of a flexible option between in-person and virtual, or preference towards virtual. There's also folks do like the current meeting format with staff facilitation. There's also some interest in potentially looking externally for facilitation. And then pretty split across the board between interest in any pre-meeting networking time. And looks like, yes, you would like to review project documents prior to the board of directors meetings. And then I won't share the open-ended feedback just for privacy's sake, but thank you so much for participating in our poll. That being said, I do want to open up the floor for any just comments or questions that folks have with regards to this section. If you have any things you want to share with the larger group with regards to format.
Kristen, I'd like to add something. With the majority looking at Zoom as the method to continue to meet, I would obviously support that, but there is value to getting everybody in the same room on occasion, whether it's one time a year or a couple times a year. If we reduce it, that how we decide. But I always think there's value to having everybody in the same room to move forward with some of the topics we have to discuss. So I wouldn't mind having a discussion about that in some fashion if we had some kind of hybrid.
Thanks for that feedback, Chris. And there may be potential for us to look into, I know we had our recent meeting in October in person. That was a combined in-person meeting. How did folks feel about that for those who were able to attend?
It was great.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. Any other comments? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Alan.
It's really important. Doing this Zoom, I'm not furthering any relationships with the other key stakeholders, the neighborhoods and businesses. I'm not developing any strong relationships with anyone from VTA and BART. It just feels like a perfunctory, just logging in every 2 months. I'm not getting as much value as I was when I was going in person, but that's just my opinion.
Thanks, Alan. And I see a thumbs up to that comment, it looks like too.
Are you looking for places, Kristen, to be able to host even once in a while meetings? Because I know I think the chamber would be interested. We certainly have that big boardroom right across the street from the downtown station. So I could work that up with Leah, see if we could do that.
Yeah, really appreciate that, Tony. And
Well, that was a great place when we had Mr. McGuire come. So thank you for the chamber for doing that.
That's
That was
right.
awesome. If we could do that again, that would be
You
great.
bet. Yep. And if you don't want to drive or park, there's a bus stop right in front of our front door. I don't know what line it is, but you can certainly take the bus.
Yes.
And bike.
That's right. Scooters, take it all.
Yes, thank you, Tony, and the chamber for opening up your space to us so frequently, and even more to come in the future. We really appreciate that. Any other comments or questions with regards to our format or suggestions moving forward? We'll definitely take a closer look at the poll and see what folks think. James, I see your hand.
Yes, I like the idea of a third-party facilitator to lead the meeting so that we don't have just the VTA primary perspective pushed at us.
Thank you for that comment.
I think that helps with the appearance of balance as well, because we don't really have a whole lot of power, or a whole lot of opportunities to push things, and having a third party facilitator I think helps even out a slight bit at least.
Thanks, James and Alan. Any other comments or questions, suggestions? If not, we'll move on to our, oh, I see James, your hand again, or is,
Yeah, more of a discussion question, but I'm wondering if you could tell us what the three primary issues are that might push the date for completion further out from 2039 to 2044 or whatever. What do you, I mean, I'm sure you've thought about what could happen, what could go wrong. What are those top three things?
Bernice, do you want to speak to that?
So on three things, of course, like labor, right? I mean, currently there's a shortage of labor as I understand it, right? So not being able to go as fast. Any unexpected things that the tunnel boring machine could run into. You know, we're deep enough, so that's one of the benefits of this bigger, deeper tunnel. It goes under utilities, but just running into something unforeseen, and obviously not getting this federal money in by the end of the year and not getting the grant, right? So then we'll have to look at, like, do we continue on? Do we, you know, when do we get that, right? So I would say, you know, funding, labor availability, and then any unforeseen risk, and yeah.
Thanks, Bernice. Any other questions? I do want to keep us moving just in the interest of time, but thank you for your comments and feedback and discussion. I really appreciate it. All right. So moving on to our next section, I'm going to pass it back to Bernice just to share an update on our downtown San Jose station specific to our referral.
Sure. So as I mentioned, we are one of the items in the board referral, and we've been working on this for quite some time, looking at the possibility of having an additional entrance on the south side of Santa Clara Street. It is not the passenger requirements for access don't require it as far as capacity, but it has been a long desire of key stakeholders in the downtown San Jose area. Because it's not a requirement for the project, the way that FTA looks at these projects is like you scope a project and you have to basically, as we're applying for the federal money, we are saying that this project as designed it has everything it needs, right? So we have demonstrated that the current configuration, it meets all of the access requirements. So we cannot advance a southern entrance as part of the project. It's also not environmentally cleared. And that is something actually answering the question about delay, like doing something like, or trying to advance something that we haven't environmentally cleared. And because of the historic designation for almost the entire like south side of Santa Clara Street in that area, there would be significant environmental hurdles to do a southern entrance. So we are looking at a southern entrance, but it is not, it is like some of the works that we did on the phase 1 Barrios extension, we had kind of concurrent non-project activities. So we need to look at this as a concurrent non-project activity and not part of this federal project for many reasons. So, and in doing part of that is, you know, it is a like separate project, and then identifying the long-term funding strategy for that and identifying what locations could that possibly be in. So that is sort of the next steps in responding to that board referral for exploring the southern entrance. So just wanted to share some of the aesthetic features of the current station design. So some of the feedback we got, we do have design review committees, and their focus is more on how you experience the station. It's not the technical use of the station, but it's really sort of the look and feel, and someone coming into it. What's the theme? What's it saying? How does it speak to you? So some of the things that we got in the past from the design review committee were that it has sort of a Grand Central Station feel. And then another piece of input we got was that it had that it really reflected the ethnic diversity and the key aspects of the downtown San Jose area, technology, education at San Jose State. So originally we had this sort of flat roof, and now with some of the feedback, we've done sort of this bowed canopy, as you'll see on the right, but we wanted it also to have this very airy light open fill. So you'll see how it's kind of a lot of light coming through on that other diagram. And then the diagram on the left really shows the vastness of the open space, the kind of nod to like clean technology also in that, but then have some representations of art, and we'll be working more with key stakeholders on the public art when we get to that point. But right now we just identified the placement for some public art, but not necessarily what that public art would be. So that's sort of where we are on kind of look and feel of the station as we continue to advance the technical aspects of the design of the station.
Thanks, Bernice. And I do see three hands raised. We'll start off with James. Any questions or comments on your end?
First of all, they're nice renderings, but my question doesn't have to do with this. My question is, sooner or later, this project will be completed. Let's assume it's in 2039 as speculated or as indicated earlier. Once that is done, what kind of additional maintenance costs do you expect will fall on the shoulders of either BART or the cities of San Jose, Santa Clara, or the VTA, or whoever? What kind of additional costs are we going to expect beyond what it takes to build the doggone thing?
So that's like a really important question, because there is, of course, as we're looking at this project, we not only have to design and build a fundable project, but we need to design and build a project that we can afford to maintain. So in 2008, there was another sales tax measure passed. It was a 1/8 cent sales tax. And that is to kind of supplement, like no transit agency gets all of their operational costs through fares, right? It's all subsidized. So basically, when we started on this project, we knew that the fares would not cover the operations and maintenance for the project. And that's what that 1/8 cent sales tax. And I think it's been, and I'll have to look at the exact amount. A couple years ago, it was like bringing in, like 40 million a year or something, but I need to check that number. But basically, that will cover it. But as we're designing these stations and while we're looking at things and we're working in close collaboration with BART on things like what kind of operational facilities should be above ground so that it costs less to operate them and maintain them. Like some of these things that we're looking at, we might save $4 to $5 million a year. So over 10 years, you're talking $40 or $50 million. So as we're looking at BART access, and when we design these, we design them to BART facility standards, but then they also weigh in and look at like, what are going to be long-term operational costs? Because our agreement with BART is that VTA, utilizing that sales tax money, reimburses BART for the cost for the proportionate share of our part of the extension of the regional system. So there's very complicated agreement, and it's an operation and maintenance agreement, and it's got formulas, but it really is like how we contribute to cover the cost of our extensions, but also the overall impact on the overall BART system. So as we're looking at this project, we are also looking at what is something that we can look at in the long term as far as the maintenance. I hope that answers your question. So it would not go to the cities, or it's VTA and our agreement with BART to pay those operational costs.
Thanks, Bernice. And I think Adriano, do you have anything to add on that note as well?
I think just as Bernice mentioned, BART has been part of the design review committee, and specifically some of the input we have been looking for them to provide is on the maintainability of the materials that we are selecting. So that is something that is very much being considered when we are looking at the aesthetic and treatment of the building facilities.
Thanks, Adriana. And Charlie, I see you have your hand raised.
Thanks. Love the rendering with the arched lobby, open air, Grand Central Station, all that stuff. That looks wonderful. My comment though is when you're looking at that, especially the top picture, this building cannot be 2 stories tall. You have to utilize the space, going from the 3rd story up to the 15th or 20th story. That's a massive misuse of downtown prime real estate. And I know this is conceptual of just what this thing is going to look like, but if you're not designing this thing to go up 20 stories, massive, massive miss.
So I'd like to comment on that. Because of the requirements for building a public transit station, there are safety requirements that equal that of a hospital. And so to build above the station makes it so cost prohibitive for a developer to pencil out that it's almost infeasible to develop above a BART station right now, a public transit station. And so when we first started this, we did look at having some TOD above the station, but because of those, it's the earthquake requirements and the structural requirements, it adds approximately about 40% more to the building cost and makes it nearly infeasible for a developer to build above the station. And that's why you will not see development above the public transit stations.
And
can you put it behind it, Bernice, in that parking lot?
There is a significant amount of development planned on what we're calling it the VTA block. So there's a couple, if you look in that little rendering to the left, there's the little historic, I think it was the old Bank of San Francisco or San Jose or something right to the left, not Bank of America. That will stay. There's basically, it's about a 4.5 acre site, and there is a whole design development framework for everything around that station and maximizing the densities. But over the actual station, it is because of those earthquake stringent requirements. It's like a 24-hour operation requirement and safety that really makes it like building a hospital. But yes, everything around it up to adjacent, yes, all planned for high density development and combination of retail, office, and housing.
So Bernice, as a follow-up, so I get Diridon wouldn't do that, but there's been other transit centers built on the West Coast in the past 10 years. Are there other transit centers that are just like this in downtown areas that don't build up?
I'll have to check
shocked.
on that.
I'm just really shocked.
Yeah. I know not within the BART system. And part of this is both, I think, BART facility standards, and I'll have to check if it's local jurisdictional standards as well, because I'm not sure on that.
But the subways in LA, they're 1 story?
I am not sure. I'll have to check on that.
Yeah, Seattle. I just can't believe these downtowns are building just for the train station and not putting stuff over it. So, 2 cents.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And like I said, it is something that definitely we looked into very deeply.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Bernice. We'll look into it further and get back to you on that. And I know, Tony, you have your hand raised. I think I saw Alan raise his hand earlier. I just want to make sure that if you have your question, just to give you your
go ahead, Alan.
Yeah. We can come back to Alan.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
you know, I'm also
There you go.
concerned about the.
go
Hello?
ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, I'm also concerned about the uh this. I mean, it is kind of grand, but it's a huge amount of wasted space, I think. We talked a number of times about you know, talking about the retail transitory development in the station for commuters coming in and out in the morning. I know there's some concerns from BART about, you know, trying to keep riffraff out, but I think it's just as important or more important to have this as part of the community and not completely isolated with this huge wasted space. I mean, if you can't build up, then let's build some TOD inside the station. I think it's a mistake not to use that space for something. I mean, to make a grand gesture is nice, but I think it's more important to make it useful, functional.
Thanks
And
for
so
that.
it might be things that you are planning. However, because I've never seen it in a design doc, never seen a conceptual doc, I don't think it's part of the design. And I think that's a huge waste. I think a lot of people would want, especially commuters, like the ones that use it in the morning and afternoon, they want to make this useful. That's what I see it all over the world.
So would it be helpful maybe at our next meeting to look at sort of what's planned near the station area? Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We'll make note of that. Thanks. And these are things that we will definitely be exploring more in our design review committees. I know that it's not the focus of today's meeting, but these are just, thank you for your feedback on it prematurely.
I
Yeah,
wanted to briefly add in, I think in the past, some of our plans included accommodations for some level of development above the station. And in 2022, one of the big changes that we made was to refine the station's vertical circulation to really streamline and make it simpler and easier for people to access the concourse level below. And as part of that, we actually had to increase the diameter of our station shaft, which reduced our ability to have those structural walls and elements on the sides because the shaft itself got just increased. So that was one of the trade-offs that we discussed extensively with the city going through that effort, and reached the conclusion that ultimately better passenger experience was worth that, and that the potential loss of development above the station, which, as Bernice mentioned, still had several challenges associated with it, could be accommodated elsewhere on the block. So I believe VTA has plans for over 1.8 million square feet of development there surrounding the station. And what you don't see right behind the station, and the reason you don't see high development just behind it, is that there is a plaza envisioned within the center of the block. You know, we really wanted to make sure that this development followed some good urban design guidelines, which included breaking that block up and providing some more open space within there.
Thanks, Adriano. Tony, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I think it's still possible, and I think to Adriana's point, they're trying to take the vertical loads from a high rise through that area with a big shaft in the middle would be cumbersome at best. I'm not even sure if you could do it, but I don't know that it would preclude the station almost as a portal to other designs, like right behind it or next to it. It could potentially be connected with some sort of movable portal, so that the experience would be people coming out of the shaft would be able to still go into a coffee shop or something like that that's kind of connected, but maybe not connected, if I guess best way to say it. That being said, my question was really around security. And I can just tell you, having been down there for a number of years across the street, it gets pretty lively. And, you know, I don't know, I see the glass across the front, which is great. Is there some sort of a folding wall or a grading system to try, once you I think BART usually in the city, I think it closes what, at midnight or something like that. I mean, what is the operational aspect of? Is this open all the time, or is there going to be times where this is closed off so that, you know, we don't encourage people just kind of meandering in there and then all the problems that go with that? We've actually had them right in our foyer at the chamber, where it's constant. So I was just curious if that's been thought about.
Great question. Yes, that is included. It's not shown in the renderings because we like to show the station when it is open, but there will be a roll down enclosure that will make sure the station is secured when it is closed, and that is consistent at all of the stations.
Yeah.
And you can't get in. I mean, the fare gates, they are working on new and improved fare gates, so you cannot get into the station area. Like all of this, all of this is inside of the fare gates. So unless you're somehow skipping that process non-officially, you do have to pay your fare to get into this area.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people skip them.
Yeah,
it's
and
sort
BART's
of a hop, skip, and a jump over.
Yeah, BART's trying to really, what do I want to say? That's been their, their redesign of the fare gates to really make that not so easy anymore. Like they're higher, they're not easy to push. So that is something to really secure the paid areas is what BART is working on right now.
Okay.
And James, I see your hands raised. I'm going to limit it to that question because I do want to keep us moving, but please feel free to chime in
What
here.
accommodation, if any, will be given to retail outlets within the station?
Adriana, correct me if I'm wrong. Were we looking at like maybe a little small coffee kiosk or something, or in a couple little things or something? Was there anything inside the fare gates?
We've had a lot of discussions with BART, and I don't believe that any retail or kiosks within the fare paid area are things that we are considering at the downtown station at this time. We'll certainly continue to talk with BART, but that's what I recall as our conversations.
Thanks, Adriana. And I do want to keep us moving, but thank you all for your questions and comments and feedback there. I do want to pass it off to Erin just to give an overview on our Diridon station.
You go to the next slide. So specific to the Diridon station, there was direction from the board that on this, you can see on the screen that's on two primary topics. One is the location of those BART station facilities referred to as the back of house, and then the connection to the BART tunnel. From the BART tunnel to the future intermodal station, used to be referred to as DISC, the Diridon Integrated Station Concept, now just referred to as the intermodal station. Next slide. So first, addressing the first set about the back of house of those station facilities items. In fall of 2023, the project undertook an evaluation to see where the project could reduce costs along the entire alignment. And moving the station facilities from above ground to above ground was one of those items that were identified to have a significant savings to the project. And not only in those capital costs that we were discussing earlier, but also the long-term operational savings as well as efficiencies. And so recently with the City of San Jose staff, we actually took a tour of the Milpitas BART station to see what some of these back of house facilities look like. Where do they need to be in relation to the station itself, to the tracks? How big are they? What kind of scale would they need to be for what's existing on the phase 1 alignment versus what we will need for phase 2? And in some of these cases, we saw how massive the equipment really is, and they need to be replaced as a unit and maintained as a unit. You can't just take them out piece by piece. And so looking at the accessibility of how maintenance is done in the future, trying to take a very large crane and pull out a piece of equipment that is underground versus above ground or maybe just one layer. So we've really been looking at what those facilities are. And then if you go to the next slide, Kristen, in addition just to those maintenance and the cost of the station facilities, we've really had to look very close at how far those facilities can be. Depending upon their use, they have to be a certain distance. This is BART requirements. This is looking at fire life safety, making sure that the BART trains can operate at the level of service that they're expected to. As an example, if you are starting to move communications cables further away from the stations, you're going to have a drop in the signal. So of the integrity. So it's something we really have been taking a hard look at, of where can these facilities be located if they can't be underground and we don't want to put them fully above ground. What configurations can we do? Next slide, please. And so to address both those station facilities as well as that direct tunnel connection, VTA recently formed a new technical task force where we're working through the location and the configurations of the different capital projects in the area and how they're going to impact the BART station configuration. So we're working directly with that intermodal station team that they're working on a Diridon business case. So talking to them, as well as our partner agencies, which include the City of San Jose, MTC, High Speed Rail, and Caltrain. And what are those best connections from BART to the station alternatives? Because they themselves are still working on different alternatives that will require different connection points. So the alternatives that we're looking at right now is going from their station, which if you kind of look at the Caltrain Amtrak tracks, directly from there into our tunnel, in where the orange line is, we'd have extend the mezzanine out. How do we possibly connect under the Caltrain parking lot to go from the Caltrain tracks to the east onto the BART head house, the primary entrance underground? Or do we remain with the existing option, which is to walk across an at-grade plaza from the intermodal station and down into the primary BART entrance? We're also looking at how those station infrastructure facilities, what can be above ground, below ground, and how they can be configured within the VTA parcel to suit all those different project needs. And we're also taking another look at the west vent shaft. If you look just to the left on this image from those Caltrain tracks, there's a little brown rectangle. That is our west ventilation shaft. We're trying to see where might we be able to move it, whether it's within our current construction staging area or if it's outside. And as we're going through all of this work, we're also looking at how is the airport connector that the city is working on, how does that figure into our existing BART station and where we might be able to move some of these facilities. Because we really want to make sure that if we're going to start construction now, that we're looking to that far future. And so each of the alternatives for the different pieces are being reviewed against a set of criteria that is going to allow both the project and our partners to make better informed decisions about which project may implement some of these changes, if we can land on a preferred configuration and at which stage it will be implemented. Some of the changes are going to have to be implemented before BART is operational, just to make sure that we're not interrupting operations in the future, but other ones may be able to wait until the future intermodal station is funded and under construction. So more to come on that one as well.
Thank you, Erin. Any questions with regards to Diridon? If not, we'll move along to our TOC section, but thank you, Erin. Oh, I see James's hand. Yeah.
I'm just a little unclear, but that's not really a whole other station that close to the existing one that we're talking about, the San Jose one. That's you're talking about.
There's a plan to upgrade the existing Caltrain station. So it would look at all the different service providers that go into their Amtrak, ACE, Capital Corridor, future Caltrain service levels, as well as when high-speed rail comes through. And it's a reimagining of that entire station. What do the tracks look like? What are the widths? Do they have enough tracks and platforms to provide the right service for the different operators?
But it won't be a BART stop.
Correct. No. The BART, we're looking at how do we make sure that the seamless transition between the two stations.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions before I move on? All right. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Melissa for the Transit-Oriented Communities Grant update. Oh, I don't think we can hear you, Melissa.
All right, how's that?
Yes, you're good on your end.
Thank you. I'm Melissa Cerezo. I am the program manager for transit-oriented communities in VTA's Real Estate and Transit-Oriented Communities and Development Department. I just want to shout you all out as members of this community working group because it's your community leadership as our partners in this ecosystem of transit-oriented communities that really is moving forward this shared vision that I want to share with you all. So I want to define for us what transit-oriented communities are, because for VTA, it means mixed use, mixed income, equitable communities within a half mile of transit stations where people of all ages and backgrounds can live, work, learn, shop, play, and have all the necessities of daily life within a 15-minute trip of walking, biking, rolling, or using transit. We know this is a common sense approach. It has numerous benefits. It reduces the need to drive. It increases transit ridership. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions and promotes health and well-being. So with this grant, we have a great opportunity to incentivize this. It opened up on April 1st and it closes on May 22nd, which is already next week. It's our first cycle with the objective, again, to accelerate a shared vision of thriving communities next to transit. We've advanced the slides a little bit here, but I want to ask my Dynamo teammate who's been working very closely with me, Adriana Rothschild, to just place our TOC grant webpage in the chat for everyone, vta.org/TOC grant. And so also the origins of this grant really comes from the transit-oriented communities playbooks. Those were developed between 2018 and 2020. And we really appreciated your engagement in that process because it was very foundational in the work that we're now doing in 2024. The recommendations, it included how we best collaborate with cities, VTA, and the community to make the most out of this incredible once-in-a-lifetime investment of BART Silicon Valley Phase 2. The playbooks also helped us to reveal that transformational transit projects and TOD must address community resilience and include things like protecting and producing housing for those who work in our valley, and also for those, yes, who work and live in our valley, and as well as protecting small businesses and supporting them. So again, this was very transformational in the creation of what we just developed in the past year in 2023 at VTA, the Transit-Oriented Communities Program. And so building on that, we can go to the next slide. Our program also is driven by our VTA Transit-Oriented Communities policy. And overall, our strategy here is to build on the success of what we've been doing on our own VTA-owned sites, where we're creating mixed-use, mixed-income, partnership-powered development. The goal of the Transit-Oriented Communities program is to extend that strategy to the half-mile area around transit stations. And in that way, we can enhance VTA's investments and also increase the share of the county's growth to areas of frequent transit in a balanced, sustainable, equitable way. We also want to acknowledge, as was clear in the playbooks, that transit-oriented development, transit-oriented communities, these are things that can increase the market value of land and housing costs and increase the potential for displacement. We want to address that. We want to enhance the social and economic opportunity for existing and future residents. We also want to see greater alignment amongst our local agencies within our county with the regional priorities set by MTC, including the transit-oriented communities policy, which is setting a new standard for how station area policies should be upgraded, and that is incentivized by MTC funding. In our next slide, I just want to quickly cover that we have a strong vision set up by several different program elements that we are going to be implementing, but a key implementation of that is actually our Transit-Oriented Communities Grant Program. So that'll be our next slide. So our grant is seeking to fund projects that will be advancing VTA ridership, the use of active modes and livable streets equitable engagement and mitigating displacement, and strengthening communities. And on our next slide, we just hope that, with this grant, we are going to see, again, the fruition of stronger, healthier, safer, more balanced communities next to transit. So in this first cycle of the grant, we're channeling $750,000 in competitive funding open to nonprofits, community-based organizations, and local agencies to fund 4 program areas. We know that this could lead towards innovative partnerships, cross-community, cross-sectoral, to remove barriers to advancing equitable transit-oriented communities. I want to make a special note here. We're targeting projects that are located within a half mile of existing and future VTA light rail stations and commuter rail stations, such as BART, Caltrain, ACE, and Capital Corridor. So I will cover the breakdown of these funds before I close my presentation. The first here is planning and policy implementation. This represents 50% of our funds. We're hopeful that this is going to result in plans, policies, and regulations that implement sustainable and equitable communities next to VTA and commuter rail stations. This is open to local agencies. The next one here is community resilience, which is representing 25% of our funds. This is open to only nonprofit organizations with a 501c3 status. And this is to uplift the critical role of community-based organizations in increasing the staying power of our communities next to transit. The third here is the education and engagement program, representing 15% of our funds. This is intended to strengthen support and advocacy for transit-oriented communities policies, and also remove barriers to implementing equitable, culturally relevant engagement practices. It's open to both community-based organizations and local agencies. And then finally, placemaking, arts, and activation, which is 10% of our fund. We're hopeful this is going to enable inviting and welcoming public spaces around our transit stations. These are our passenger environments. We want to see them enhanced with publicly accessible art, cultural experiences that really reflect the vibrancy of our local community culture, history, and identity. This program area is open to both local agencies and CBOs. So in closing, we did release our grant on April 1st. So that's already about 6.5, 7 weeks ago. Our grant deadline is next week, next Wednesday, May 22nd. We're hopeful that some of you actually have already heard about this. Please check out our website, vta.org/TOC grant. We really believe the impact of this grant is going to release new ways that we can approach ridership. We're going to remove barriers to creating equitable outcomes. We're going to advance affordable housing together, or efforts that are aimed towards improving affordable housing. And that concludes my presentation. I appreciate this opportunity to share some information about this TOC grant, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Melissa. Any questions with regards to the TOCs?
Melissa, do you have any kind of idea of what the individual grants would be?
Yeah, I mean, they really range in the kinds of eligible projects, right? So, for example, under planning and policy implementation, this could support activities that local agencies are working on to update their station area plans. For placemaking, arts, and activation, this could be areas, transit stations and the streets and the building walls outside of them, enlivened with murals and public art and colorful crosswalks, parklets, and kind of projects like that.
Melissa, Crochet with the Sharks. Really quickly, wonderful all the goals here. I would have to say that the balance, placemaking, arts, and activation are vastly more expensive than planning and policy implementation. So all these are laudable goals, but I would say 10% seems to be it seems to be a small percentage when you talk about what the actual cost of placemaking is.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. I would agree that it could really vary in terms of what we want to see. I think we're hopeful that it's not necessarily going to be infrastructure projects that we're incentivizing, but more the ability for interventions, like small scale interventions to then also seed, an increase in different kinds of activities available at station areas.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Any other questions for Melissa? All right, we're going to move on to our early construction activity section. I'm going to pass it off to Matt. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, next slide. Okay. So for our update on early works construction, we're happy to note that initial construction activities have started at the West Portal, which is a site located at the new haul yard and maintenance facility. These initial activities include site grading, which is going to take place for about 2 to 3 months as the contractor prepares the site for formal construction, and the installation of fencing and dust screens that take place over a 2-month period. Some of these activities may produce some noise and vibration impacts during the day, which will be monitored. The VTA BSV team will continue to coordinate construction updates between the contractor and stakeholders in the community. And just as a reminder, the construction transportation management plan that covers this work was reviewed and approved by the city councils in June of 2023. Next slide. Oops, it's not changing. Oh, there we go. For the information that's shared for VTA's construction noticing process, our team gathers the 4 W's of what to communicate to the community. That includes kind of like the what, which is the summary of construction activity taking place, the where, and understanding of the work location in the community to include map and our details as such. The when, that highlights the days and the times of the work, and as a note, if needed, when the work will take place, if it's on a weekend or nighttime, and then also a section on what to expect, which includes information on what impact may be that the public is facing, including noise, dust, any kind of sidewalk closures, parking impacts, bus stop relocations, and even road detours. Next slide. This is an example of a construction notice that was recently published and published to our project website. At times, it is also printed and distributed to nearby residents and businesses within the work area, and available at tabling events to update the community on the work that's taking place. The work information is secured from the contractor and integrated into this construction notice template that we will regularly be producing, again, on the website, and flyers available if we have to canvass throughout the community or provide it to residents and businesses. Next slide. Next up, there's some information on how we electronically distribute the construction notices. The construction notices are distributed via email through our MailChimp platform to all of our construction noticing stakeholders, our CWG members, neighborhood associations, and to all of individuals that have signed up to receive our project information. We also post the notice on our project website and distribute it via social media. Our physical flyers are distributed to businesses and residents that fall within the 1,000-foot radius of the constructed work activity that's taking place. And additionally, depending on the activity, we also collaborate with VTA's transit operations teams to ensure that activities that could impact transit riders, such as bus stop relocations, is communicated to them, and it's reflected in their transit communication apps. Next slide.
And that's the end of our construction activities section. I do want to open up the floor if there's any questions with regards to our early works construction. If not, we'll keep moving along and Matt can jump on into our community engagement. So with that, Matt.
Yep. Okay. Okay, here we go. So we're really excited to share that over the last 5 months that we have, we were able to engage over 1,400 people at 9 different outreach events. So our team has been very, very busy in the community. We've been engaging with all of our communities across the project alignment and station areas, and are really excited for any type of other additional engagement opportunities to come. But we've been doing pop-ups, we've been at Lunar New Year festivals, spring train shows, etc. So a lot of events out there. And if you guys ever have any ideas or opportunities for us to engage in, we also recommend those recommendations. Next slide. Upcoming community engagement, just taking a look at the month ahead, VTA will be hosting a community meeting for the 20th Street Little Portugal Station at the end of the month on May 30th, and a few tabling events at the East Bay Regional Connector Project's groundbreaking event on June 8th, and also the Dia de Portugal event on June 8th as well. So we encourage you to let your communities know about these opportunities, to learn more about our BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 expansion project, and to help us spread the word on when we're in the community. Next slide. We're also really excited to share that we will be launching a brand new project-specific website for the BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 project in the late May, early June timeframe, which will include project information, project benefits messaging. We'll highlight VTA's transparency commitment. We'll highlight a document resource library, project FAQs that will be updated regularly, and a contact us page that will enable the public to stay engaged with the project. Phase 2 of the project website will be slated to launch in late June, where we will be featuring construction information and updates, business resource program, and community outreach information. A few really cool interactive features will be added to that portion of the site, if you will, that phase of the site, with an interactive construction map and a shop local marketing information to highlight the small businesses that participate as part of our business resource program and the Eat Shop Local program. Next slide. And just taking a quick look at the next few months ahead, we wanted to highlight that we will be starting our design review committee meetings for downtown Diridon and 28th Street Little Portugal stations in late spring. We will also be soft launching our business resource program in late June. And then following our DRC meetings, we will be conducting online and in-person engagement in the community to gather input on our stations about the look and feel elements as we move ahead. Next slide. And then also, as Bernice mentioned earlier, our TBM naming contest recently closed just about 2 weeks ago on April 29th. We presented the community with contest criteria that the name should be of a female name that has significance to the Santa Clara County community. And we're really excited to share that we received over 730 names as part of the contest submission. In the coming weeks, we're going to have a TBM naming committee comprised of BART Silicon Valley staff as well as city staff that will make a final naming recommendation to the VTA GM for consideration, and then we will launch that name soon thereafter. So a lot of excitement with that and a lot of exciting news to come. Next slide. And as some of you may know or have heard, obviously, through your invites, VTA will be presenting its private by invitation only West Portal groundbreaking event on June 14th from 10 a.m. to noon at our future Newhall Yard maintenance facility location. Elected officials, project stakeholders, and project partners will be invited to the event. And to thank you for your continued support as a valued CWG member, we've extended an invitation to you for this event. You should have received details and calendar invites on that invitation. And please reach out if you'd like additional information on the event. We really look forward to your attendance, as this is a very momentous event as the project moves forward with its key milestone of groundbreaking. And please, please, please be sure to RSVP. Next slide. Just an update on our business resource program. We're excited to share that our business resource program will be soft launched in late June, as I mentioned prior. That will include the following elements. We will have a business resource program section on our new project website, and we'll have a social media push that really gets the information out there into the community. We'll be featuring a BRP canvassing kit, which will be packed with collateral detailing all of our available programs to the business community, along with opt-in and sign-up forms. We'll have our business liaison team out on the streets to conduct business-to-business canvassing outreach efforts to promote the BRP program, as well as answer questions and to connect with businesses. We'll be planning a media launch of the business resource program in that time period to come. Also, we'll be taking this out, our new program, out to the business task force, who has been working with VTA on this program all along the way, as they're the voice for small businesses in the community, and also taking this out to the business community as well, to host a business community workshop to promote the program directly to area businesses, and initially to the Santa Clara community, because that will be the first area that we will have our early construction. So we'll be launching the technical assistance program portion of the business BRP coming in fall of 2024, which will include our community-based organizations engagement. We'll be surveying our CBOs on what kind of programs and assistance that they can offer the business community. And then we'll have our business outreach survey that goes out to all of the different businesses to get information from them on the programs that they're interested in. And then the highly anticipated direct financial assistance program launch will be slated for 2025 with the commencement of major construction efforts. Next slide. And then, as a reminder, we encourage you to stay involved with the project to learn more. We have numerous events throughout the year, from tabling events to community meetings to obviously these CWG meetings and webinars. We also post information on our social media platforms through blogs and the website. So we have an email and project email and hotline to for people in the community to reach out directly to us. And we invite everybody to use the different resources that we have to stay connected with the project. Okay, and I think I'm done. And so, any questions?
James, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, the new hall maintenance facility, is that something that BART is doing, that VTA is doing for BART? BART will inherit it once VTA is done making it or developing it?
Bernice, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So the new hall maintenance yard and facility is where the BART trains will be stored at night, and will be maintained, and the car wash is there. And so it really helps with the overall operational efficiencies, because the closest yard currently is in Hayward. And without that yard and storage area, their trains would have to go back up, and there would be no place to store them. So you'd have to send them back every day and redeploy them in the morning. So it really helps maintain operational efficiencies.
But my question is, who is going to own it? Is it BART or VTA?
So for every part of the project that VTA builds, we own the infrastructure. So we own that yard, but we have that agreement with BART for them to operate and maintain it. So it's our facility. So all these facilities, these stations that we're building, we are the owner, but we have the agreement for BART to operate and maintain.
Thanks, Bernice. Any other questions for this section? All right, knowing that we're at time, I do want to keep us moving quickly into our CWG member report out, but thank you, Matt, for that community engagement update there. And just as a reminder, this report back section is just an opportunity for you to report anything that you've seen or heard, or feedback that you've heard from your communities, and also any ways that you've been sharing any VTA BSV updates with your communities as well. So I'll open the floor for anyone if there's anything that folks would like to share.
I'd like to mention that in April, members from the VTA attended the San Jose Arena Authority Board of Directors meeting and presented an update mainly regarding the Arena Diridon Station area. So we have them back on a periodic basis, but they were at the board meeting in April. And unfortunately, I need to go now as well. I have another obligation. So thank
you, Chris.
Okay.
Anyone else have anything to share?
Now, there's some confusion in my neighborhood about the naming contest. I sent that out because they had all submitted for the Mercury News naming contest, so they were all confused on why they're doing it twice. So.
Yes, understandable. And more information will be coming out just on the process there for our next steps. But thank you for flagging that.
Yeah, just to answer Charlie's question, my name's in bold because Rod Diridon pushed me into this chairmanship base for this group. So that's why it's there, Charlie.
I thought you were special. Okay.
He is special. We have been coordinating with Tony and we really appreciate just his partnership with us. So he will be representing the downtown Diridon chair going forward. So thank you again, Tony.
And I did, yeah, you bet. I sent a note, I think maybe it was to Bernice earlier, just how much of that information, we can start getting out to people because people do ask, and I want to review this with Leah and then start using our platforms to get it out to our members and local businesses and small businesses.
Okay, we'll make note of that. Thanks.
Thank
James,
you.
is that a residual hand raise or is that another one?
No, so my question is, to what extent is MTC involved in this at all?
Bernice, do you want to speak to that?
So as far as the project overall, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So they're like the funding they disperse. So some of the funds go through MTC, some of them are formula based, some of them are allocation based. So on that funding chart, I don't know if you can see some of those funds come directly through MTC to the project. So they are the, what do I want to say? They help disperse some of the regional funds. So they are definitely part of the funding equation to get the project funded.
But that's it.
I can't think, and somebody help me out here, what the term is for MTC. There is a term of what their role is in the region. But
the Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO.
Yeah, they're the planning. Yeah, yes. So they do the long range plans. This project is like identified in their long range regional plan as a top priority, I believe. And then the state funds go through them, and based on their formulas, they disperse the funds to us. And there are some regional funds besides the state funds. Like the regional measure 3, I believe they also disperse those funds as well.
Thanks, Bernice. Any other questions or report backs here? All right. Want to keep us moving. Thank you for your patience and for hanging with us these extra 5 minutes. I did want to share for our next steps. As mentioned earlier, we will be having a potential additional CWG meeting before our September 10th meeting that we have slated. I'll be emailing updates to come just to confirm that as we get confirmation there. And then in our next meeting, in that additional meeting, we're planning on providing potential updates for our referral that we had discussed and presented updates on today. But at least for our September meeting, we're looking to hear some more phase 2 updates, get some construction updates as well. as well as our community engagement and get a sense of our station area planning and adjacent developments. So that's on our radar. Thank you all again for attending today for our May meeting. And I will be sending out our meeting slides to come. I know we haven't sent those out, but thank you again for taking the time.